What's up, party people? We're back. I am Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. Today, I'm joined by Milad. How are you doing, Milad?
All good, all good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Just give me 1 second. I don't know why the last day I've been noticing a bit of a challenge with Twitter, but it's okay. We'll just keep moving. So today's guest is Milad. He's the co-founder and CEO of Peakage. It's an AI-powered consumer insights platform helping CPG brands build products people actually want. So I'm quite interested in rolling up our sleeves here, Milad, diving into it. I was also reading about your background, fascinating stuff. You founded the Uber for Iran, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Wow,
Yeah.
that's quite an accomplishment and a myriad of other things before I guess you landed in Canada. So maybe tell us first, give us a little bit of information about Peakage, a little peek into Peakage, if you will, yeah, in terms of what to expect later down in the interview. But we can maybe after that, start with your story.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, Peakage, as you already know, like every year, there are a lot of new products and innovation actually get launched in the market, but not all of them actually survive. And a lot of them, after maybe a few iterations or sometimes they get basically canceled and they leave market. And the thing is that with CPG landscape, they need to consistently evolve and develop new products based on the trends and based on what consumers are asking. But the thing is that not all of them are acceptable, are in the basically where they should be in terms of like the taste, the packaging, the pricing, the a lot of different things. So something that happens is that a lot of investment actually gets spent on launching a new product, and then that basically goes to waste, and they never survive, and nobody remembers a lot of these products after a few years. So what we've been thinking about and started a few years ago was that how can we fix this? How can we help? There are a lot of market research and consumer testing platforms out there, but those were designed for enterprise companies, very um, um, uh, cluttered platforms, like old fashioned and everything, same as like market research in general. What we wanted to do was that how can we make this accessible and easy for everyone to use for every decision in their innovation cycles? How can we enable them to make that decision with the data? So we built Peakage. We use basically AI in a lot of part of it. I'll walk you through maybe later on how we're using AI and how it helps with that. But basically, the in nutshell, what we do is that we streamline the whole consumer testing and consumer research for brands. We get involved as early as when they are looking at market. They want to understand what are the gaps in the market, what consumers want, how they want to change the current products and things like that. So they leverage us to learn about that. Then they basically get to a concept stage. We help them to validate that concept with the consumers. And then when they get to the first, let's say, a prototype, they test sensory, they test packaging, they test a lot of different aspects of that product. And then finally, when they want to launch and go to market, they sort of get a sense of what would be the right positioning, messaging, and everything around growth for this product. So we basically throughout this innovation cycles and maybe renovation cycles for CPG brands will help them sort of get access to that data through testing all those ideas or products with real consumers in real time and in context.
Very cool. Well, I'm excited to kind of peel back that and go a bit deeper. But before we do, Milan, I'd like to touch on, a little bit about maybe your history, your background. So take me back to what it was like growing up in Iran. What were you like as a kid, and when did you first get interested in tech and business?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I'm a millennial coming from like, x86 computers and everything. In my like school, I guess I was fascinated with programming. I started with a Lego app. It was actually a Microsoft Paint sort of like, app, but you were coding like things. You were just like a code to draw a triangle or like circle or stuff like that. So I started coding with that, and I got like, fascinated with the whole space. Studied a lot of like, programming languages and everything. Before even getting to the university, I was working and developing like, air ticket agency systems. But then studied computer science as well. Before actually get to the university, I left Iran to study actually in um, London University in England. And then from there, the whole idea of like, I want to be a programmer at some point, I want to just like, develop crazy things, is I got introduced by one of my actually professors to the marketing world. And I was like fascinated with like, wow, after we develop this, how can we sell this? How can we market this? And from there, I got kind of like, went into the marketing of world of like tech. Digital marketing at that time was like, the thing. Um, some of your viewers might think I'm a dinosaur, but we started with the Google ads and everything at that time. That was like early on. And for me, it was interesting to sort of like, start growing startups from like, maybe just a couple of users to hundred thousands or like million users. The B2C side of things, the marketplaces and things like that, that was kind of like, push me towards like, working with startups, early stage startups, and then getting to Peakage.
So you've worked at Rocket Internet, Mozio, FreeBusy, Velocia, all in growth and marketing roles across different continents. I'm just curious, looking back at that journey, was there like a kind of a common thread running through all of it, eventually, pointing you towards Peakage, or how did that all come about?
Uh, I guess so. Yes. Things have changed recently. Now we are actually at like a very big disruption in the whole tech with the AI in the past 2 or 3 years, I would say. But before that, there was sort of like, a very common kind of like, pattern happening between all these startups. Like there was a cool idea at some point. These ideas were all new. Right now, we are just recycling a lot of these, or kind of like, making it better. But maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago, they were all sort of like new business, ideas. But then the thing was, how can we kind of like, grow these? How can we build the behavior around these? Like, again, I know this might sound too old, but like 15 years ago, people didn't know how to use their phone to just get a ride, right? Or do a lot of other things with their kind of like, tech stack. So for me, in those, most of those experiences were around building the behavior and kind of like, culture around how users kind of like, change their lifestyle to start kind of like adapting to those new ones. Because the growth that comes with like, maybe just the promotions or incentives or things like that basically fades away as you stop them. But if you kind of like, try to build and get into their lifestyle as a, of course, like a tool or software or whatever solution, that would become kind of like, a natural organic growth forever. You mentioned like, the Uber, the ride sharing. I have a lot of experience in that space. So that is actually comes with the same thing, that for us or for my team at that time was kind of like, how can we become part of their day-to-day life rather than just like a tool that helps them make things easier. How can we kind of like become their kind of like part of their lifestyle? And from there, all other experiences were sort of like follow the same. Like everywhere that I kind of like went and kind of like help those startups were kind of with the same mentality. How can we be not just necessarily a productivity or kind of like a nice tool, but rather a part of their life?
Have you read the book Hooked?
Yes.
You have. Would you say that kind of touches on this topic of building habit forming products?
Exactly. They talk from the product aspect of it, but that's exactly what it is. We forget sometimes about like that aspect, and we kind of like go with hype trends. I don't know, things like that. But that is still true. Like building habit forming products or solutions.
Cool. So, with all your experience in ride hailing and marketplace startups, what was the specific moment or realization that made you say, the CPG industry is broken, and when it comes to understanding consumers, I need to fix it?
Yeah, I did have experience with CPG as well. Like early on, I was like doing some internship with the CPG brands. So I saw at that time a little bit about like the pain and kind of like the process that they're going through. But coming from the marketing world, basically, um, I saw a lot of like companies spend tons of marketing and advertising budget on things that never sustain and kind of like fail. And the whole package basically idea started like a few years ago when I received sort of like non-relevant product samples, like baby diapers, when I didn't even have like a kid at that time. They were just giving me like free samples of that I wasn't like right users. And that basically pushed us with my co-founder Sina. We sort of like started thinking about like what dynamics are happening in the CPG space in terms of like launching and growing a product, and kind of like digging deeper, talking with a lot of like brand managers and marketing managers around how do you launch these products, how do you know if I'm the right user to just like market to, how do you even build this product, because we came from the software and kind of like tech world. And from product aspect, I guess everyone knows that you should build your product by just interviewing your potential customers and everything. And we were kind of like thinking that is the same thing happening in the CPG space, or no, they just like launched this because there is a common kind of like sense around people need a diaper. That's it. But did they ever like interview maybe at like enterprise level CPG brands? Yes, they did. But now that actually emerging brands are driving a lot of like movements, probably you saw in the recent years there were a lot of like big M&As happening in the CPG space. There are a lot of like venture capitals coming to the CPG space, investing in the CPG brand. So they are sort of like becoming, with the subscriptions and everything, maybe the next space than tech, to kind of like getting disrupted with the venture money, with subscriptions, with like tech and everything around that. Is this as are kind of like doing the same as like what we did. So that kind of like pushed us to look into the innovation cycles and how they launch the product. And we kind of like got sort of like surprised with that kind of like horrible numbers in terms of like how much money they waste every year, how much kind of like products go to landfill, just to know a few years later that that wasn't a success.
So, you and your co-founders are essentially a group of friends from university. Is that correct?
So not from the university, but I met actually my co-founder in Rocket Internet that you mentioned. He was actually a founder of another venture for Rocket Internet. At that time, we started kind of like helping each other and building kind of like friendship. We worked like a few years together, and then like went our ways. And then like a few years after, we kind of like got together to just start PKH.
Cool. And so I think you guys started this business or Peakage during COVID. Is that correct? Was that did that pose some specific challenges? Like, did the pandemic actually validate your digital first approach, or did it create new challenges you hadn't anticipated?
Of course, it created a lot of challenges. Like from the COVID to even now, we are still like going through a lot of like market kind of cycles. Like a lot of like disruptions from like supply chain at the COVID time, from like being at home to then AI and a lot of like around that. But the COVID, specifically talking about the COVID, actually kind of like validated that uh, before there were a lot of like testing with, as I said, bigger companies were doing the testing, but the testing were happen mostly at central locations, CLT testings. They were basically hiring a lot of like people coming to a central location to just test that product. Someone was just like interviewing them, like asking them questions and things like that, focus groups. So that was happening at that time. But with the COVID, people staying home, they still wanted to just test these products. So there was a kind of like big need to test these products now in home, and we kind of like leverage that sort of like timing to basically build a platform and kind of like streamline this process to recruit people and kind of like fulfill the products, collect the data, and kind of like analyze and get to results. So in that aspect, COVID actually were sort of like a catalyst for kind of like our growth, and of course sort of like an opportunity for brands to see that there are other ways of doing it, and it can be as good as like what they did, with of course less headache, less cost, and like faster kind of like execution.
Interesting. You said you've built a community of over, is it 5 million shoppers on the
Yes,
platform? So
yes,
how do
yes.
you ensure that the feedback you're collecting is genuine, it's high quality? And then what role does this like AI truthfulness scoring play in that?
Right. So there are a couple of things. One, yes, we built this like throughout the past few years. We built this kind of like panel, this community of people that are interested in testing the product, sharing their feedback, like being an influencer in the next innovations or products that get launched. In terms of the quality, there are a lot of like different basically processes and kind of like methods that we take to sort of like make sure that the quality of what the data that we collect is like high. One is that we use a mix of AI, and we use like more more defined or kind of like standards in doing the quality checks. In terms of the standards, there are a bunch of methods that like most of like market research platforms kind of implements to be able to just like identify low quality responses, data points, things like that, and they remove. That's one part. So one, we do collect our data incrementally over time, and gradually we kind of like build users profile and profile these users. So we have this opportunity to sort of at any time, if we see any in consistency, any kind of like red flags, anything like that, to remove that data point. One of the differentiation package that we has that with other platforms is that we don't tap into necessarily third-party panels. With the third-party panels, you don't have the historical data, but with us, there is that. So we have this opportunity to kind of like do background sort of check or vet users and kind of like verify them. That's sort of like the standard kind of like processes. But aside from that, we use AI as well, a lot of like different forms of it and techniques to sort of like identify users that are not necessarily the quality that what we need for the testing, from their sort of like behavior on the the platform responses and kind of like tests that they do throughout multiple tests that they do, not just one test, but how they sort of like react and kind of like work. A bunch of like smaller kind of like actions, like the quality of responses. For example, we leverage AI. One of the key sort of like data points that brands collect throughout their consumer studies are open-ended responses, where they want qualitative kind of like data around like the what consumers think about that specific aspect of, for example, the product. So we use AI not just to verify on the spot and kind of like analyze the data and see if this is the right and this is like the data that we want, but we even use it to kind of like guide users through the process and kind of like make sure that they touch base on all the important factors that brands want to hear about. So it's a mix of not necessarily just like putting a lot of like kind of flags and kind of like removing data points and stuff. It's all about like that plus improving the quality of data that is coming. So we implemented all these, which is again all standards plus like a lot of like new AI features, but we kind of like focus on improving the quality as well, because none of these people are let's say professional researchers, the users that are or professional survey takers. We actually don't like those kind of like users, and we remove them from the platform. We want genuine like normal users, like that they will interact day to day with these products in market, right? But they need to be guided somehow to share the data that we need and we kind of like looking after. So these are kind of like things that we do to make sure that we have a high quality of the responses and data.
Very cool. So maybe looking 5 years out, Milad, where do you see Peakage and kind of the broader consumer insights industry?
Right. So this whole consumer testing and consumer research, it used to be very complex, and you had to have like a researcher in-house or data scientist in-house to help you get a sense of data and things like that. What we did right now is that we sort of like made it with like AI agents, made it easy for any stakeholder in the CPG brand with any high level business question that they have or anything that they want to test. We made it easy to sort of like for them to design the study. The one of the biggest part of like doing these research or getting the data that you need is to design the right study, from the methodology that you use to the survey questions to the instructions to the whole how you kind of like can make a decision on, right? So that's one part. The second part of it is that the recruitment, having the right users, doing the quality checks and everything around that. And the third part is now I have the data. There are tons of like BI tools and kind of like cool visualization tools that give you charts and everything. That's nice, but I need direction. I need, let's say, someone to just review this and tell me that what should I exactly do, right? So these are all part of like doing one study or like one testing or anything like that. What we did now is that we started with like maybe the most difficult part, which was designing the study. We started with like bringing AI and AI agents to kind of like take care of that part. And then we actually started with analyzing the data. Then we went to like designing the study, and we are now kind of like going through the whole process. So we want to just like create an army of agents doing different things, taking care of like different parts of it. Some part of it we already did, some part is still like we're working on, and we kind of like building. So and then not next 5 years, but in the next in terms of peakage, and I'll tell you in terms of what I see and market research. But in terms of like what we're going to do in the next maybe a year, we're going to just like become like a fully agentic platform that the whole platform will take care of like everything. They just need one input or interview the brand about what they need, and that basically is enough to just give them the final results that they want. So that's on our side. In terms of market research is still like with all the AI, some sectors I guess got disrupted faster or like deeper with AI. With market research, some part was easy to sort of like get improve, like designing a survey. Now it's super easy to do that, right? But still there are a lot of like part of it that basically gate kind of like kept by enterprise brands. They don't want to just like touch those areas. They don't want to do it because they prefer that the agency business model, like supporting it, doing on behalf of like brands, which makes it super expensive. But I think that what will happen in the next few years is that we will see the same thing, not just with the consumer testing and consumer research. We will see this across the whole market research space, that all these big kind of like agencies right now doing putting humans to do things for their clients will basically turn into tools like us that will take care of like the whole process.
Very cool. Well, thank you, Milad, for your time, and thank you all for tuning in. And with that, Milad, hang out for maybe 1 minute. I'll bring this one to a close. Until next time, everyone, take care. Bye bye.